Okay, in today's video, I want to talk a little bit about a technique to make it look like the camera has a little bit of shake, like it's being held by someone, and there's slight vibrations and movements um, of the camera while it's being held. To do this, we're just going to use the default objects in the scene, and we're going to look a little bit about keyframes and looking at them through the graph editor. So let's go ahead and split our 3D viewport into two sections. And in case I haven't talked about that before, if you look here in the top right corner of the 3D viewport, you can see that the cursor changes from an arrow to a crosshair. When you see that, left click and drag. And when you let go, you'll have two separate windows, and you can change the size of each of those as needed. Here on the left window, we'll go to the top left, hit this drop-down menu, and switch to the graph editor. And let's go ahead and select a camera, and let's hit 0 on the number pad. So we're looking at what the camera sees. And let's go ahead and hit the letter N to open the shelf, property shelf here on the side. So at the moment, our camera has no animation data, no keyframes. So let's hover over the location data and hit the letter I. And when we do that, we have some information appearing here in the graph editor. So you can see we have the camera. We can see that there's some camera action, and it's talking about object transform. So that deals with location, rotation, and scale. And then we have the three numbers that have a keyframe on it. So if we zoom out a bit, we can see the red line for the X value, green for Y, and Z for blue. So if I hit play and this moves across, we'll say the X location data is 7.3589. So on every frame, that data stays exactly the same. It's not increasing or decreasing. So let's pause our animation and go back to frame. Actually, let's jump to frame 250. So on frame 250, let's change the Z location. We'll just move it up to, say, about 8. So on frame 250, the Z location is changed to 8, and then hit the letter I, and that will insert a keyframe and update that. So we come back to the graph editor and we select Z. We can see now that the Z value starts at what we had at the beginning. I forget the number. And from 0 back, it stays at that number. And then from 0 frame, or frame 1, I should say, to frame 250, we can see that that value is increasing up to 8. And then after frame 250, if we continued, it would stay at 8. So we hit play, you can see that the camera is moving up along this line. And notice that it's not a perfectly straight line. It kind of eases into the movement, and then it kind of slows down or eases out of the movement. And we can select these handles and adjust that movement so it goes up and back down. Or we can change the shape of this curve. We can also select the keyframe and make it happen sooner or farther away if we want. So this is just kind of an introduction to how we look at animated data in the graph editor. What we want is for this to have a little bit of shape, like someone's holding it and it's moving a little bit. So let's go to the X location and select that. And if this panel's not open, you can hit the letter N to open it, or there's a little arrow that you can click in the corner. And we're only going to look at one thing, but there are more things that we may talk about in the future if time permits. But in this, we're going to look at the modifier tab, and we're going to click add modifier, and we want to add a noise. And you can see that our camera starts jumping back and forth on the X axis. And if we zoom in, we can see that there's all kinds of random value changes up and down from the original number. Now, to adjust this based on what you want, if you were in a horror movie and someone was terrified, they might be holding the camera and shaking to this point. But we can use the scale and the strength to vary this. So scale, if we increase the scale, that's going to spread out those up and down movements so that they don't happen so quickly. If we change strength, it's going to increase how much those values deviate from the original number. So if you had 0, you would have at max 1 above 0 or 1 below 0. If you have 5 and you start at 0, you would have the max of 5 above 0 or 5 below 0. And this will give you the tool to add just a little bit of movement to this on the x-axis. Since we have this, we can now look at these two icons for copying the modifier. So we hit the arrow up, it's going to copy it. Then if we go to the Y location data and hit the little clipboard with the arrow down, that's going to paste it. So now they both have that movement. Sometimes you don't want them to have the exact same movement. So if you change the phase, it's going to vary those. They're not exactly the same anymore. Then if we go down to the Z location, we can also paste it to this. And you'll notice that it keeps the original start and end point, and it adds some variation between that. So it's going to allow you to have the ability to start at one place, end at another, but add some random values to that. So if you want a little more jerkiness going up and down, you can change that shape. You can change the phase. And these are all numbers and ways to add some variation to the location of the camera. Or if you needed an object, say you had a lightning bug that you wanted to kind of fly around the field and just randomly move, you could do this to the lightning bug's X, Y, and Z location. So it's always just kind of randomly moving, and you don't have to animate every single part. Okay, so that is all for this video. This will be a technique that if you want to use, you can apply to our final renders of the terrain animation.